Hey there. How would you feel about doing something a little different with me? That sounds creepy. What I meant was, let's build some Astra Militarum. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's try our hand at some normal dudes from Warhammer 40k. We'll go with the Cadian Infantry Squad. This was part of the Christmas box, the Bastion Platoon that I picked up in December, and I've put it away in my pile of shame for months and months and months. And I think it's time. I've gotten pretty good. I've gotten pretty far with my Deathwatch Space Marines collection. There's not a whole lot for me to do there. There are a few more pieces, and like I did the pre-order of the heavy intercessors, which I'll include into my army. But I kind of got sick of painting black Space Marines. Enough so that I started making kind of mistakes, and I'm having motivational issues. So I think I'm going to try switching gears. I'm going to try to do some Imperial Guard. Astra Militarum. Imperial Guard is what they used to be called back when I would play this game. And so I know next to nothing about our Astra Militarum friends. What I do know is that I used to put some of these kits together. It was before these plastic kits. When I played 40k, one of my buddies was all about the Imperial Guard, and I helped him build some of his kits. He had more money than I did at the time, so I would help him out, building and painting. But there was like the Mordians, the Valhallans, the Catachan, the Talarans. He had just like a squad of everything, and it was really neat. Nowadays, you have these guys, the Cadians and the Catachans, and the Cadians are the ones that came in the box. So the box included 4 of these sprues. So these 2 sprues are identical. So I'll kind of just go over what's in the sprues a little bit. Now, I'm not absolutely sure this is everything that's in the sprue, but I assume it is. So I think this one sprue will make 5 Imperial Guardsmen, or Imperial Guards people. Alright, so let's take a look at what's on the sprues. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 trooper heads, and there looks to be some variations. Like this guy right there. He's got his chin strap undone. This guy looks to be the Voxcaster, the comms guy. We have the utility belts. They, I guess, go on the backs of these models, and they're like canteens, a pouch, and a combat knife. We have this commo unit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 legs. I'm gonna keep trying to say Space Marine when I mean Guardsman, but that's just the way it goes, I think. We have an arm here where the Guardsman has got a clip of his last gun. He's going to be reloading. We have what looks like to be a flamer fuel tank. We have one last gun. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 2, 4, 5 Guardsman torsos. We have probably belt attachment for the heavy weapons person. There's a canteen. It looks like a drum magazine. We have a couple of accessories. These are pouches with grenades. Some of them is a pouch and grenade. Some of them are just 2 grenades. We have just a helmet by itself and like a helmetless trooper. On this side, we have a couple of arms. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4, 5 So we have some las guns. Some of them have a bayonet attached. Some of them do not have a bayonet. There's a chainsword arm. There's a grenade launcher arm, a flamer arm, and some more arms, and then one with a pistol. So like some of these will be like for sergeant. So that's really all there is, and I think that this is going to be sufficient to build 5 Imperial Guard troopers. I don't know this for a fact. I've never built this kit before. Let's give it a shot and see if it's as straightforward as I'm hoping it's going to be. The instruction manual that came with the box, it's the full color version, so it should be straightforward. Let's give it a look-see. Time for some nippers. So this is a little voiceover. I've transitioned over to a different army. Not, full-time. I still think my main is going to be Deathwatch, Space Marines, but I've painted a lot of Deathwatch Space Marines on this channel, and I knew eventually I'd have to transition over, right? There's only so many Deathwatch Space Marines one can collect and paint, and so I knew at some point I'd have to switch over to something else. And last December I picked up the holiday boxes, some of them, not all of them obviously. I picked up the Bastion Platoon for the Astra Militarum, and I picked up, after the holidays, from a third-party retailer, I picked up the Star Pulse Cadre from the Tau. And so I was going to split between the Tau and the Imperial Guard so which do I paint next? So I decided on Astra Militarum because I think the way that the news patterns for Warhammer 40k are going, I feel like the Astra Militarum are going to get their codex before the Tau. So I'm hoping that I'll start kind of getting a head start on my troopers here, so that if Games Workshop decides to release some new models or something like that with when they launch the codex, I'll be able to kind of partake in those festivities along with all the other Astra Militarum players. So yeah, that's the plan. The other thing is I have an idea of how I want to paint these guys. Like, they're not 100% yet, but I think I'm going to go with something a bit more colorful than I did before. Mostly because I'm tired of painting black Space Marines, and I could totally do an urban camo, like with a dark gray clothing and black armor paneling. But honestly, I'm sick of black at this point. I am just sick of it. I need something else, and so I think I've decided to go with gray, like a gray clothing, and like a nice bluish armor paneling. So like the flak armor, the flak helmet, those will be a nice blue. I haven't decided on the shade yet, but probably something a little deeper, like not like a baby blue, but like a deeper blue. And so it can still be sort of urban camo, but not all the way urban camo. I want some color. So that's the plan. And so I have that idea for the troopers. I figure I can always invert the color scheme, like alternate squads, just to kind of keep things fresh. So this Bastion Platoon had, I think it's 20 of these guys. So I'll do 10 in one color scheme, and then another 10 I'll alternate the color scheme. That's the plan, and I don't know if that's how it's going to work out, but right now that's the plan. I don't know what the tanks are going to look like. That I have no idea what I'm going to do. Obviously, the color scheme is going to be kind of the same, but how you apply color scheme to a tank and troopers, it kind of varies. So I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do there. So I figure I'll get nice and used to the color scheme on the basic troopers and just experiment from there. That's that plan. Obviously, Astra Militarum, they have a bunch of tanks, so I'll be building some of those, I'll be magnetizing some of those, and so the cavalcade of content will continue, just slightly different. And as I get new ideas and new troops for my Deathwatch Space Marines, I'll add to them. So, for example, like this weekend I put in, I'm building the models as I talk over here. So if you hear extra sounds, it's me building that. So I pre-ordered the Heavy Intercessors kit, and the Heavy Intercessor Captain. So, I'm still going to build those kits. I have a Watchmaster idea that I want to do, and so I'm going to do that. And I have some aggressors. I want to fill in the kill team squads for the Primaris Marines, so I still want to do that. So my time with Deathwatch isn't done. It's just done for right now. I just need something different. So if you're interested in coming along for that journey, cool beans, man. Welcome. And if not, I understand. If you subscribe, you'll be able to see when I switch back over to Deathwatch, and eventually Tau. Maybe that'll pique your interest. I should also mention that as I'm kind of building these, I've noticed that there's quite a few mold lines on these models, and they're in a place that's hard to sand down, to buff down. I'm still buffing it down, but it's like on the seams of the legs, and so I feel like that's going to be a major part of every one of these builds. It's an older kit, and so the mold lines are probably more of an issue for these guys. And I know that we have a new upgrade sprue that's going to come with new Cadian orders. They have like some additional weapons and some additional helmets, and like even a couple of female troopers, which is cool. It's not they weren't published, or they weren't released when I got this Bastion Patrol, so I'm not going to have any of that. So I'm going to have to find some way of customizing these guys, right? I'll have a couple of standard squads, but maybe I'll find some third-party sellers to kind of spruce up my basic infantry squads, because my understanding is that there's going to be a lot of these, and so probably want to do different things while still kind of staying within the guidelines of Games Workshop's. I'm not saying I'm ever going to play a tournament game, but I'd like the option, so I'm going to build my units with an eye towards fielding them competitively if the spirit ever takes me in that direction. But if you guys have any recommendations on like third-party sellers, I have a couple that I've used for Space Marines, but if you know of a couple of things that maybe specialize in neat upgrade kits or neat alternative pieces for Imperial Guard, let me know in the comments. I will be happy to check them out. Okay, so here is half a squad. I'm going to do these 5 at a time just to kind of help me manage the amount of parts. And so I've got the bodies and I have the arms separately. And here I'm kind of showing you how I'm managing them. So I've got the bodies adhered to the painting handle, and then the arms attached as well, kind of right behind them, so they help me prime them all at the same time, while also keeping the arms matched. Because so this arm is going to always go with this arm, etc., etc., etc. If I start swapping these out, they're not going to line up well. And so these, in fact, may not line up well because I didn't discover this until about halfway through this process. So I may have to do some messing around with mixing and matching of pieces. So if you want to manage yours, this is what I would recommend. So just to keep it manageable, I'm doing half a squad at a time, 5 dudes at a time. There's a little bit of my dog's hair in there, and it's driving me nuts. Yeah, there was a lot of removing mold lines and buffing mold lines. They're attached to the sprue in just weird places, and so you're gonna. I've spent more time cleaning off mold lines on these models than I did with Space Marines. So that's something to look out for. You're gonna spend more time building these than you did Space Marines if you've got both armies. So I'm gonna go ahead and prime these. I'm gonna give them a prime of flat white because that's gonna help me with what comes afterwards. Oh, and before I prime these, I should also mention that I did not include any of the little bits and bobs that go on the models, like the belt accessories, ammo packs, etc., etc. That is going to come later. I want to get these primed. I want to get the base color on them, and then I'll go back and add the other little bits and bobs. I could probably pull it off, but I want to keep the number of parts I'm managing at the same time kind of to a minimum, so I don't get distracted. So here's the plan. This first batch, I'm going to do it this way. Once I get some of the paint on the model, then I'll go back and add some of the other little bits and bobs. All right, here is our Imperial Guard buddy. I prepared what I think is going to be the color scheme for my brand new Imperial Guard regiment. I went with Necromancer Cloak from Army Painter. It's a darker gray. But it reads as gray as opposed to a normal black glaze, which kind of reads like black. So I'm going to go with gray for the pants. And the tunic. And I'm not using a base coat, I'm just glazing the gray so I can control kind of how much goes on, where it goes, etc., etc., etc. And it leaves behind those highlights that I'm always looking for without the extra work that I'm absolutely not working for. So that's what he looks like right now. It's a pretty light shade of gray. And I'm not quite sure if that's what he's going to stay like. But for now, let's let it dry and see what it looks like. It might need a coat or two to look like where I want it to be. Here's our trooper. He's painted in the gray kind of cloth with the blue armor. And I don't like it. I don't know why this doesn't work. It just doesn't. I think it's the blue armor. In theory, gray and blue should work. But I can't. So I'm going to try a different color pattern because this just isn't going to do. All right, I'm going to try something else. Bear with me. Help! I'm ugly! Help. As I was working on these, I was going to try a different color scheme. So I did this one to kind of contrast with this guy, and when I finished it, I wasn't happy with the way he looked either. So I thought, you know what? I think it's time to do multiple versions. So this is the one, this is the model right here. This is the one that I wanted to, to kind of base my entire Astra Militarum battalion in. But I wasn't all that happy. I tried this guy next and I thought, no, it isn't working still. So I did a couple of other versions to see which one I liked better. And, I'm kind of torn. I don't know which way I want to go. There's things I like about almost all of them. This one, I don't like the color green, so I probably won't go with it. Although the yellow is kind of growing on me. But this guy I kind of like as well. I wanted to stay away from the usual Imperial Guard look, the tan and green. But it looks pretty good. So, I don't know. So I have to decide which way I want to go, and I just don't know. So I'm going to deliberate between all these guys to see, which one I like, and kind of decide on what kind of washes we're going to go over each of these things. So yeah, I have some choices to make, and they're not going to be easy. So after some deliberation, I decided to go with this color palette. I think it's going to be a bit more realistic, especially when I go and start painting some tanks, whenever that is. But I'm doing something different. So this is what it looks like with a white undercoat, and I was a little not sure. So for the rest of this batch, so I built another 5. I had to strip the paint off of the dudes that I started painting. And so I stripped off the paint, and the primer comes off then too. And so I primed these guys in gray using Army Painter's Uniform Gray. And so I'm going to try, I want to see what it looks like with a gray undercoat. So the colors that I'm using then are going to be for the uniform, it's going to be Dark Stone, my Army Painter. That guy. And for the armor bits, it's going to be Skeleton Bone. Right there. And so I have some on my palette. I'm going to start to apply the base color. I'm trusting that this is going to go really well, and I won't have to strip paint off of any more models for a little while, because I'm quite frankly tired of it. The product that I've been using, it does a good job, but it's still a lot of work. So I'm trying not to make a habit of it. So I've got a glaze of the dark stone. That's just a bit of watered down paint. Not terribly watered down, so it's still plenty of pigment in here. But it's watered down enough that it flows on really easy, and it leaves a bit of the undercoat on the raised areas. I'm going for something that looks good but also is easy. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each model because there's going to be a bunch of these. And as I'm applying the glaze, I'm also stirring it up a bit because it has a tendency to settle, so the pigments will go towards the bottom of the paint, and I end up picking up mostly watered, which is fine at first, but then as I do that over and over, the amount that's left as I scoop it out, it gets darker and darker. So I want a relatively consistent color as I work to apply the base color. So stirring it up at the source has become my go-to. Here is my trooper. He's got all the base colors he's going to get. And so I just kind of wanted to show you what he looks like at this stage. As you can see over here, I've done the same thing to 5. So I want to show you the difference though, because so this guy's got the uniform gray undercoat, and then the dark stone and skeleton bone base coats on the different parts of the armor. He's got, I want to say it's leather brown for the boots. So it's basically 3 earth tones, right? There's a dark brown, there's a really, really light brown, and there's kind of a medium brown, all in the same model. The gun, I went with basic black, kind of like, I figured, kind of like military firearms are mass-produced now, right? They're all kind of a composite, not composite, polymer. Polymer, basically they're plastic. And so I think that's how I'm going to represent them when I paint them up. But I did want to show you the difference between these two. I put them side by side. So here they are. These are the same models. They look like they're different sizes on my screen. And they're exactly the same. The only difference is that this one is based in uniform gray, and this is primed in uniform gray. This is primed in flat white. You see the difference that the primer color makes. They have about the same number of coats. It's still, basically the same. It's the same color. I pulled it from the same place on my wet palette. The only difference is the primer. Well, and the boots. I was going to go with the same color boots, but I went with a different color. So I'm kind of split. I don't know which way to go. I don't know whether I'd keep them all gray or keep them all white. At least for this group of 10, I'm going to end up splitting them into, some of them are gray, some of them are white, just because that's how it panned out. So all these guys here, this is the kind of a newly built troopers. The ones you see, you don't see over here. Over there, right here. These are the ones that I stripped. So I had painted them in the different colors. So once I decided on the color scheme, I had to strip them of the paint, and so that's what you see here. So these I'm gonna prime white. So basically they look like this. The other 5 in that same 10-man unit will look like this. It's a weird approach, and certainly not something I would do all the time. But for this unit, it's my first squad. I think it's fine. I just want to see what they look like. Maybe if I kind of think about it, I'll pick one over the other. But probably I'll end up with a mixture as I move forward. So each unit will have one primer or the other, depending on what I want to portray. But they're pretty radically different, I would say. Just that one variable. So I think the next step is to add not some details yet. I'm not ready for that. I'm going to add some washes. It's fairly basic right now, but this can definitely use more depth. So I'm going to go with, on the pants, I'm going to go with a black wash. I don't think I have any brown that's darker than this. So I'm going to go with a darker wash on the pants, so a black wash. On the armor here, I'm going to go with a medium or dark brown wash, a very dilute, very thin. I'm going to put some over on all the bone-colored armor plates, so it has both of those things. And for the boots, I'll go with like a dark brown. So basically, for the wash, what I'm doing is I'm stepping it up. I'm darkening it up a bit with the wash, and so I'm going to go with a shade that's darker for each of those. Just kind of wanted to see what it's going to end up looking like. So far, it looks pretty neat, but I'm going to let it dry and see what it looks like and show you once that's done. And I'll do the same thing to all these other models that are just kind of hanging around, waiting for some love. Alright, and so that's what it looks like now that it's all the way dry. Yeah, I think it looks quite a bit better. The washes weren't overly dark. Maybe this one was a little darker than I wanted, but I can play with that. But I think the pants look pretty cool. So now that I have most of this kind of figured out, I need to go in and start doing a bit of detailing and some touch-ups. So, for example, there's a belt there. It's inconsistent. It's hard to see, and I probably want to do it the color of the boots, but that's going to be hard, man. I may just need to go. Oh, I don't know. I may need to go with a different color. And so I got some touch-ups like right in there in the neck area. I need to start putting in some faces because even the strap has some details. So I'm moving away from the wide-ranging painting to the detail-oriented painting. That includes the arms and the weapons. So it's time to get detailed, yo. This is going to be quite a bit different from my Space Marines. Because my Space Marines were elite, you know? These guys, they're the Emperor's finest, but not that finest. So they're not going to get any gold basically anywhere, so I'm going to hit them with a black Aquila. Such a tiny little detail, I don't know. And I think I'm going to need to go with a black belt because it's going to be tough to distinguish it from the browns around it. I mean, it's a good opportunity for like a red belt or something. Like that splash of color. I'm just going to go with a black belt. Okay, so these guys are ready for their arms. I still have some detail work to do, but the base is on, the wash is on, and for the most part I still need to wash the weapon and the silver parts. So let's get that done before we move on to detailing. Get some like handy dandy glue. Like I said, he's not all the way done, but he's most of the way done. There's not a ton of detail on these guys, so it's a blessing and a curse, right? So they're kind of plain, but that's okay. They're troopers. They're not hero units. Alright, here's my squad. They're coming along. So I've got all the base coat on them. I've got the washes on them. They look pretty decent, but I still need to do a lot of touching up. So for touch-ups, I found a couple of spots that need a lot of work. So like the back of the neck, the fabric from the tunic kind of bunches up in there. So that's a place I need to do some more work on for a lot of these, not every one of them. Another place that I found needs work is... So I don't know if you can see, but underneath the helmet, there's a gray spot in there. So the way I painted them, they were on those little pieces of wood, little sticks with putty, and so I didn't get all the base coat in there. So I had to really carefully touch up places like that. I got to do the faces and correct any mistakes. Like this guy has a little bit of red from the base, so I've got a little work to do there. And then I also have to do things like, well, like this stuff, like the comms box, the little accessories that go on their belts. I didn't add any of that stuff in, and so now is the time when I get to do that. And it should be something approaching fun. But touching up is never glamorous. It's never actually fun. But it does really impact the final quality of your dudes. There's also a few areas underneath the shoulder pads where, again, my tool set didn't really allow me to get in all the way, so you kind of have to correct those mistakes, touch up where it needs it. It's not a big job, it's just kind of a tedious one. Here's a part that I've been really dreading, but it's time to get it done. Talking about those chin straps. Really tiny, and they're going to be hard to make out. And attached to them, there's like this helmet lining, which right now is helmet color, but it really should be lining color. And I have limited options in terms of what colors I could use, because I don't want to use anything too brown, because there's the face, and I want it to be distinguishable for the face. So I'm going to, like the belt, I'm going to choose black, just so that it stands out. It's not a color I would normally use here, but I don't have any really good options. And I've broken out one of the good brushes, because I need to be able to get in there. In fact, I'm using a magnifying glass to do this because it's such a small detail. I really need to be able to know where I'm going, and I don't want to mess up because the face is right there. I don't want to have to redo the face. I mean, I haven't finished the face, but I don't want to get any black on the face because that's just asking for trouble. This is the point in the painting process where I wish I had steadier hands, but I do not have steady hands. For painting in really tight spots like this, where you need a steady hand, one of the things I've picked up on, and it was reinforced by somebody on YouTube, but if you rest your hands on the surface that you're painting on, so here in my case I'm painting on a table, if you rest your hands on it and just manipulate the model with your finger, you kind of cut down on a lot of the jittering. Basically, you only have the jitter in your fingers to worry about, as opposed to the jitter in your fingers and your hands. So that's a little tip that's helpful. It won't eliminate your shakes if you've got them. So glad I'm not a surgeon. I would end up killing so many people. So, there's the dude with his chin strap. If I'm feeling brave later, I'll go in and do a different color for the actual padding on his chin, but there's a good chance I won't. So now I've got a bunch of these to paint. I'm going to go for every squad member gets one. And I noticed that some of these, so here for example, this is the sheath for the combat knife, and it's got no combat knife in it. And some of these, like this guy, it does have the combat knife in it. At least, you know, the hilt is there, so that suggests that it's in there. So they're slightly different. And so what I'm going to do is these that have the combat knife in the sheath will go on squaddies that have no bayonet. And so those guys who have a bayonet, like this guy over there, he'll get one without the combat knife in the sheath. So in order to do this, I'm going to go with kind of the standard olive drab green for a lot of this. I've primed these with uniform gray. And goblin green is the color of choice here. And so a lot of this is going to have the green, but I'll allow for some details. So for example, the canteen, I'm going to paint it green. That's like a canteen cover. And this guy, I'm going to assume it's like a las gun power pack holder. So part of it will be green, and then I'll hit it with a different color at the top to make it stand out. Now I'm not real happy with this green, but that's okay. I can always come back and give it a little wash of a darker green to have some of the colors kind of stick out. But I do want to use the, I don't know, the green that I imagine like mass supplies are done. And I'll do the same for the sheath. So I've got another couple of colors I may need to add. So there's a little leather strap that holds the knife in place. I'm going to make that leather. I'm going to make the pommel kind of a metal, and then the grip on the pommel, I'll make that leather. And I'll do some metallic things here on the canteen and this cover for the las gun. I'll also add that a different color. But before that happens, I need to let the green here dry. So while it dries, I'll do the rest of these in green. The wonders of batch painting. So finished the little accessory belts for my troopers, and I gotta say they look pretty good. I went with this green, kind of like army issue green, with some different color details. So I've got like this leather strap where the combat knife goes in. I made that leathery, and I added like a middle lid to both the canteen and to what I imagine is a las gun ammo pack. And so I went over excuse me. I went over them, based it in the Goblin Green, kind of a glaze, and then I went over it with the there's a green tone. It's a shade, a wash from Army Painter, and that made a really nice difference. I really like the way that looks. It made the overall green tone less bright, less neon green, and more of a deeper green that I was kind of chasing after. Same thing here with the leather strap. I went with the leather brown, and then gave it a touch of face wash, actually, also from the Army Painter line, and it gave it a nice kind of a three-dimensional appearance. And so I'm afraid that these parts are actually the best part of my squad. They look the best quality. And I don't really know exactly where they go. I mean, I have a good idea of where they're going to go. So I'm going to spend some time gluing these things on here. I'm guessing it goes kind of like that. So it should give my troopers a nice splash of color they didn't have before. So that's good. All right, that's what it should look like. And by the way, I got a little bit of an owie. No matter how familiar you are with them, no matter how much you use them, hobby knives ain't no joke, man. Treat them with care. I was careless, and I sliced my finger open. And it's such a sharp blade that it was really hard to get the blood to stop flowing out. Not a fun time. So, always be careful with your hobby knives, lest they betray you. So before I move on, I've got a couple other pieces to do before we're done. They're mostly detail pieces, but they gotta be done. So before I move on, I just kind of want to point out that painting these little accessory packs takes a long time. Not quite as long as, painting the model, but it's up there. Like I spent a lot of time doing these. I mean, a lot of it was drying time, right? So each individual piece doesn't get a lot of paint. There's not a lot of time. There's not even a whole lot of details. But there's enough detail that you basically have to do a couple of different parts. So, there's the green, then you have to let it dry. Then there's the black undercoat for the metal, then you have to let it dry. There's the leather, then you have to let it dry. Then you have to go back in with wash, dry, wash, dry, wash, dry. It's a long time to get these to look right. And this is not something that I encountered with Space Marines, primarily because most of their, doodads were on the model, and so I could just, paint them. I didn't really emphasize them. They never looked well when I had it, say they have a grenade sticking out to the side, and I try to paint that grenade, it always looked gross. So I ended up just kind of pretending it wasn't there for the best results. But these, you can choose not to add them and just have plain Marines, and that's fine, but it looks so nice. And so I realized that by having them separate, so the pieces are optional, you can take your time. So if you're going to add them, this kit basically forces you to take your time with each of these parts. You can't just slap some green on it and call it a day. I mean, you can, but since they're separate, you kind of treat them as such. And in this case, at least, they turned out better than the rest of the model, I think. So that's something to think about when you're deciding whether to add things like that. Well, my squad is almost done. They're not looking so half bad. They're a bit on the messy side. The arms don't really like going on these models. I've had some trouble getting the arms in position without gaps. So, for example, this guy right here, you'll notice that huge gap on his shoulder. I've tried to paint it in, and I couldn't find a way to get the arms on the model without having gaps like this. Not while the arms connected to the weapon the way they're supposed to. It seems like it's one or the other. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if the model build quality is kind of shabby. I honestly don't know. But I'm pretty happy with my my unit color and the paint job. So there's really only two things left to do. And one of them is to paint my bases a bit more. I added a little bit of the, what is it? This technical paint from Citadel. It's the Martian Iron Crust. So it's nice and chunky. But it needs some depth. And to add some depth, I'm going to use some of this shade, Cadian Orange. So that it sinks into the crevices. I don't know how this is going to look. I'm hoping it's going to look fine, but I'm prepared for a disaster. So I'm just adding it in. I'm adding it to the dried texture paint. It's a kind of a similar color. I'm hoping to kind of enhance the orange nature of the dirt. I mean, the dirt is red, but I want to emphasize that. I don't want to take away from it by adding, like, say, a dark wash or something like that. But I don't really know how this is going to dry. But that's what it looks like right now. Once that dries, I'm going to do a little dry brushing. Probably either some light gray, maybe some yellow, or maybe some light gray and then orange over that. Just to, again, emphasize the warmth of the colors. But that assumes that this shade that I'm adding doesn't just make a soggy mess, which is kind of what it looks like. Once I've got the wash all laid down, let that dry. The dry brushing all laid down, I'll let that dry. And then I'm going to circle the bases with some black paint and then apply a little bit of, not the stain, the protection stuff. Well, here's my first completed squad of Astra Militarum troopers. It was an interesting process. I will say I enjoyed painting these. I think a lot of the reasons because it's different from the Space Marines that I've been painting since I restarted this hobby a few months ago. You know, their bodies, they're covered in cloth, and so that gives us some opportunities to do some interesting things with shading and washing and what have you. So there's that. And, you know, also it was really nice to paint something that wasn't just black all over the place, like my Space Marines Deathwatch army. And I don't know, they have a lot of character. These are just simple dudes, and in fact, if I put them right next to a Space Marine, they're just Space Marines are just humongous next to the Imperial Guard. So it's nice to see that contrast. It's not something I had really thought about since all I really was painting was Space Marines. So yeah, there were some fun moments here. Having said all that, there's a couple of things that I did not enjoy. So one, there's a lot of really small details. The Aquila, for example, they're all really small on the helmets and on the guns. And the faces, they're all really small. It's hard to get in there and do any kind of highlighting. And I think more than that, maybe it's my lack of experience in building these models, and so I'm hoping to get better, but there's a lot of sloppiness in the assembly. I'm thinking specifically of the arms, how the arms connect to the torsos. So the arms have to be connected to the torsos, but they also have to be connected to the weapon. And those two seem to be incompatible. Again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I'll keep my eyes open for that, and maybe future builds will require me to use some milliput or some other kind of modeling putty to make the joins between the arms and the torsos a bit more meaningful, or a bit more seamless, or at least less seamful. I don't know if that's the thing. The other thing that I really didn't like is that there's mold lines all over these models. Across the helmet, across shoulder pads, across pants, up the crotch. Like, there's mold lines all over these models, and they're unnecessary. Now, these are older models, so I get it, right? So Games Workshop has been doing a better job of manufacturing cleaner looking models. And this is an older kit. I mean, this goes back a while. So, if they ever re-release, Cadian Troopers, or even other squads of the Astra Militarum, I would hope that they do a better job with these mold lines. And yeah, I could have done a better job sanding and buffing, but, you're going to sand 10 helmets, and then 20 shoulder pads, and then 10 pairs of legs, and it's not like on the pants. You really can't sand and buff because they're like on pockets and they're across boots. You would spend a good 10 minutes per model just sanding the pieces. It's a lot of work. And so this squad, I did the best I could with the time I wanted to spend with them. I didn't want to spend, an hour a model. That's not how I roll. And even if I had tried, I don't know that my skill level is to the point where I could make a clean looking model, sanding off all of the mold lines, all of the seams. So it ended up being just what it is. So I have hopes that these models will get better if they're ever re-released, if they're reimagined. I really hope they do, because, this is a core army of this universe, and they're neat dudes. I mean, these are, regular humans. They're not like demons, they're not aliens, they're not superhuman. They're just dudes doing the best they can, trying to, prevent the oncoming darkness from swallowing them whole. That's a great story, and these models kind of embody that. These are just normal little dudes doing their best, and so I love the idea of the Imperial Guard, and I'm going to keep painting at least certainly the rest of my Bastion kit. I don't know necessarily that I'll build a 2,000 point army. I'll see what the codex looks like when it's finally released. I'm guessing in the next couple of months. But Overall, I enjoyed painting these. These are a different painting challenge than I'm used to, and I hope to get better at these. So, if any of you have any ideas on how to improve, if you have some tips and tricks that you've developed as you've worked with a lot of these models, let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate, seeing how you've handled this challenge, particularly if it's different from the way I've handled it. Having said all that also, this has opened my eyes to using washes in a slightly different way. So I used the green tone from Army Painter over the green painted model parts, and that looked amazing. And it's a different look than the usual washes I use. The washes I normally use are just watered down versions of the paints, and they go on different. Like they act differently. They have a different result. So I'm going to play a bit more with the pre-mixed washes that Army Painter has, and also maybe I'll try a few more from the Games Workshop line, or the Citadel Color line. I've heard some mixed reviews. People seem to like Army Painter for that specific purpose, for the shaders. Apparently Vallejo paints not so much, so maybe I won't go down that path for those. But I've heard good things about at least specific Citadel Color shades. So yeah, I'll probably try some of those as I try to get better at painting Imperial Guard units. I'm not sure what the project that I'm going to work on next for the Imperial Guard. I'm thinking it'll probably be a vehicle of some sort. So, if you're interested in seeing my next Astra Militarum unit, why don't you give me a subscribe? That way you'll know when it comes out. And if you like this video, give it a like. And even if you do neither of those two things, I thank you for watching this video, for watching me come on this journey in the Warhammer 40k hobby. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Be nice to yourself and each other.